All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into Texas news from a particular angle.
Yep.
It's what our sources call an America First and conservative perspective.
Right.
And this viewpoint, it really puts national interest and self-sufficiency front and center.
You got it.
We've got some really interesting material to dig into covering three main areas.
Okay.
Texas's approach to border security and something called state sovereignty,
Mm-hmm.
their energy policy, and how it butts heads with federal regulations and all the measures they're taking around election integrity.
Okay.
So the goal here is to understand, what are the core concerns and ideas
Yeah.
driving these positions in Texas.
Yeah, that's the mission today.
Sure.
What are the big things that Texans care about from this America First lens? And, what does that even mean?
And it's interesting because these three things,
Yeah.
they seem to connect to a bigger idea of, national self-determination and maybe even like a different view of how
Right.
Texas fits into the whole USA picture.
A vision for the state's role within the union.
Yeah. Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with border security,
Okay.
and specifically this Operation Lone Star.
Right.
This seems like a huge commitment of resources from Texas.
Absolutely.
So what are the main reasons behind such a big effort?
Well, the sources we have, they say it boils down to the feds not doing their job at the border.
They feel like the federal government's dropping the ball.
Yeah, they see it as a failure of federal enforcement, and that's why Texas feels like it has to step up.
To protect itself.
Yeah, to protect its own communities and to assert its right to self-preservation. It's like a basic right they're arguing.
Interesting. And they're pointing to some pretty specific things, right?
Definitely.
Like the sheer number of migrants encountered and all the drug seizures.
Yeah, huge amounts of fentanyl being seized.
They're using that as evidence to say,
Right.
look, this is a real security crisis.
Right.
We can't wait for the federal government.
Exactly. They're saying this is an emergency and we have to act now.
So it's like Texas feels it's filling a void left by the federal government.
That's exactly it. They believe it's their duty to step in where the feds haven't.
And it's interesting because our sources also talk about the cost of all this.
Oh, yeah.
It's not cheap.
No way. This Operation Lone Star, it's putting a huge financial burden on Texas taxpayers.
And they see that as another consequence of the federal government not stepping up.
Right. It's like, hey, we're having to foot the bill for something that should be a federal responsibility.
So you've got security concerns and you've got financial concerns.
Right.
And both are driving this assertive approach to border security.
You got it. It's a double whammy.
Now let's shift gears to energy policy.
Okay.
There's definitely some tension between Texas and the feds on this.
Huge tension.
What's at the heart of Texas's position?
Okay, so the big thing is Texas is really against this rapid shift away from fossil fuels that the feds are pushing.
Like oil and gas.
Exactly. They're saying, hold on, we need to pump the brakes on this transition.
And why is that?
Well, they're really worried about American energy independence. They don't want to become reliant on other countries for energy.
Right.
And they're also saying that this fast transition is going to hurt the Texas economy in a major way.
Like how?
Well, for starters, you've got potential job losses in the energy sector. Texas has a ton of jobs tied to oil and gas.
Yeah, it's a huge part of their economy.
Exactly. And then there's the risk of higher energy costs for everyone in Texas if they can't rely on their own resources.
So they're saying the federal government's maybe putting the environment ahead of people's livelihoods?
That's the argument. They're saying these regulations are prioritizing a green agenda over the economic realities on the ground.
It's not just about the economy, though, right?
No, you're right. It's about national security, too. Texas sees its energy resources as crucial for the whole country.
Keeping energy affordable and reliable.
Exactly, and reducing our reliance on foreign sources of energy. That's a big part of the America First idea.
Making America self-sufficient.
You got it.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about election integrity measures.
Okay.
Texas has been in the news a lot for this.
Absolutely.
From this America First and conservative view. What's the main goal of all these efforts?
Well, the sources we have, they say it's all about making elections more secure and transparent.
Increasing people's confidence in the results.
Exactly. They want to ensure that the system is trustworthy and that the outcome reflects the will of the voters.
So what are some examples of the measures they're taking?
Well, they're pushing for stricter voter ID laws.
Making sure people are who they say they are.
Right. They're also putting in place regulations on mail-in ballots.
To prevent any funny business.
Exactly. And they're giving more access to poll watchers.
Some more eyes on the process.
Exactly. The idea is to make it harder for any kind of fraud to occur.
So they're saying these are common sense steps to protect the integrity of the vote.
That's the argument. They're framing these measures as essential to ensure fair and accurate elections.
So to wrap up today, we've looked at three key areas: border security and this idea of state sovereignty,
Yep.
energy policy,
Hmm.
and the clash with federal regulations,
Right.
and all the measures around election integrity.
Hmm.
And we've seen how these areas reflect this America First and conservative viewpoint in Texas.
Definitely. And they touch on some really big themes: national sovereignty, economic priorities, and the whole way the government should work.
Yeah, it's a very specific vision,
Absolutely.
and it all raises some really important questions for all of us to think about.
Like what should the balance of power be between the states and the federal government?
Right. Who gets to decide what?
Exactly. And how do different political perspectives prioritize things like security and the economy and our democracy?
Yeah, that's something for everyone to ponder.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Texas,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll see you next time.
See you later.